Welcome, Robert. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Robert is the founder of Bode Canada, an amazing real estate platform. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Bode does?
Yeah, so Bode is the first of its kind platform that connects buyers and sellers using technology and creating the capability for individuals to both list and purchase their homes. And we're live in Calgary, Edmonton, in fact, all of Alberta right now. Plans to expand across Canada and ultimately internationally. So launched a couple months ago. Pretty excited.
So, how did you initially get the idea for Bode?
For me, I guess a good analogy is I never used a travel agent to book travel. And the real estate experience, the way it is today, is very manual. There's multiple people. There's four people basically in every transaction. So you have the logistics and the complexity of having buy agents and sell agents always with you, and the manual back and forth that it takes to set up a showing or set up an offer or negotiation or contracts, all those things. So I would rather sit on my couch and book a flight using Expedia than walk into a travel agent's office and sign some papers and have them do the work for me and then pay them a fee, all of it taking longer and being more costly in the end. So that's one analogy, but there's many. There's banking, there's a number of other things that we do in the rest of our lives already using our device, whether they're transactions or plans or trips. Airbnb is another good example. So I wanted to take that experience that I have in the rest of my life and apply it to the real estate domain. And right now, it really doesn't exist that way. So we're very excited to be the first to truly go all the way to a fully automated, fully tech-enabled solution.
Are there other similar players in the space, similar platforms, competitors?
Most of the market today is still doing it the traditional ways. So you hire an agent, buyer, seller agent. There are some newer entrants that have what I call a hybrid approach. So it's an agent that basically is an agent mentality that is using some technology to enhance that experience a little bit and ultimately have the seller sell on their own behalf. What we do is we don't have any agents, so we're going all the way to the end state, which is taking a big leap of change and saying we'll provide you with forums, we'll provide you with support, with data, with everything that the tools, everything that it takes, because everything it takes to be successful, because you are smart. Canadians are smart, particularly ones that can afford to buy homes. They're educated, they're working professionals. So we're demystifying the process and creating that experience that we all enjoy in the rest of our lives, and at the same time charging a lot less money than anybody else. So we're 1% upon close. You don't pay anything up front, and as a result, the cost savings are dramatic, 75% less than what you would typically experience with a traditional transaction.
It sounded like you guys built the platform very quickly, got it active very quickly. When did you start on it?
Yeah, so the company was incorporated in February, and then we started into our customer centricity, our co-creation plan in June. So that was our alpha testing, beta testing July and August, and then launched in September. So it happened very fast. We have a very capable team, so it was really exciting to make that much progress that fast. But it is a living, breathing thing. And when it comes to software, you got to continue to make it better and always driven by what is the customer. You can think you're brilliant and create the best thing in the world, but it's actually the customer, the integrity of what the customer wants that should actually drive your decision making. It's the thing with technology, you can do anything with it. So that's its big advantage, but its big challenge is you can do anything with it. So how do you get into a very refined customer-centric process? You have to do that through a lot of direct engagement with customers and co-creation.
So what was your biggest hurdle initially in getting it off the ground?
Yeah, I guess I would say that's a good question. We wanted to have you kind of have the challenge of and coming back to the team. You have so many brilliant people with all these ideas. It's how do you prioritize the best ideas and make that trade off in terms of speed versus a comprehensive feature set. That whole discussion is the number one challenge, I would say, and was for us. You could have the opposite problem, which is nobody has any ideas, in which case you've got kind of a flat, uninteresting business. But in our case, it's all of these ideas. How do we make sure we're connecting the best ones with the marketplace and what people want, and then create a really organized roadmap to continue to do that in the future. But when you're going to launch, you could easily spend 5 years trying to build this big thing. But if people don't like it, if people don't understand it, they don't use it, then it's a lot of wasted time.
Yeah, for sure. So what you've had a few people on it so far, sell houses on it. What has their feedback been like?
They've been pretty excited. So we had one of our listers sold 4 properties in 15 days, an average of 15 days. Some beautiful townhomes and total of 6.5 million if you add them all up. So high end, beautiful places. And she saved 150,000 in commissions. So she was very excited. Her whole mentality was I put my blood, my sweat, my tears, and my money into building this thing. I know every inch of it. I designed it. So I'm the best person to sell it. And if I can do that, leveraging this Bode platform that gives me this differentiated marketing and exposure and this platform that attracts individual buyers as opposed to agents, I can also save substantially as well.
So what are you guys doing that's unique to get the listings in front of potential buyers?
Yeah, so we do a couple things. So we are technically a brokerage. So we're a licensed broker in all 10 boards across Alberta, which means we will, upon listing, we will put your stuff on realtor.ca, on Zillow, and 20 other websites. And then we'll also, in addition to that exposure, where everybody goes today, we'll also digitally market your exact listing. So we'll say, okay, your place is in Marda Loop. What kind of place is it? What are the specific demographics that would be interested in buying this thing? And hone in using hyper and geotagging the exact kind of buyer that you'd want. And you can use a number of things, including, credit scores and variety of demographic information to try to get the 10 best buyers to show up, do a listing, and hopefully compete with a couple of offers and get you a fantastic price. So as opposed to, bus benches or billboards and a shotgun blast approach, which is kind of typical in the industry, we go to the other end of the spectrum and hyper target your exact listing.
That's really, really exciting.
Yeah, it's been fun.
So it sounds like you have a really solid and interesting management team. Tell us a little bit more about who you're partnered with on this.
It's a kick-ass team, and it's the most fun part of business is working with high performers. So my executive team is we have my chief marketing officer I worked with at 10 years at Axia, Lindsay Scabar. Then our broker is a good friend of mine. He did 10 years of industry brokerage work. So he had the old kind of agent structure, and now he's in on this because he really believes in it. Gary Schultz is our CTO. He's worked all over the world, many years in Silicon Valley, full stack guy, knows the ins and outs of tech like nobody else I know. Jordan Allred is our VP of Business Development. He worked with Axia as well with me for a period of time. He's a chemical engineer, but has an MBA as well from Cornell. And then Alan Kelly is our Chief Revenue Officer, who actually moved here from Stockholm. He's got a master's in economics from Oxford, as well as being a senior exec at consulting firms, and worked for King actually most recently, the Candy Crush business that's a couple billion a year. That was his gig there. So an international, eclectic group of people, but everybody I've worked with before or know very well personally, trust implicitly, and very excited to work with.
That's awesome. It sounds like a a very solid team.
Absolutely.
A lot of experience combined. So you came from a very ambitious and entrepreneurial family. You guys as a family have done some pretty cool things in the past too. So tell me a little bit about the different things your family and your dad and yourself have been involved in prior to this.
Yeah, so my dad, Art Price, was 28 when he was running Husky Oil back in the day. So he went from engineer to CEO in 5 years somehow.
Wow.
No, he's obviously a very, very smart guy and learned a lot in business in his previous through his childhood through Sunterra, which is the other family business, where learning from his dad and working with his brothers to build that business definitely rounded him out in terms of his experience as he got into the oil patch.
So was it your grandfather that started Sunterra?
Yes. Cool. And my grandparents, both of them.
Okay.
And with very humble beginnings, they started with nothing, and my dad and his 5 brothers and sister were right there working right from the start. You hear all the stories: no warm water, no plumbing, cold winters, feeding the pigs, all that stuff. It's all real. So they started that way, and obviously very inspirational for us in the next generation to have benefited from their hard work. And then after Husky, he started Axia. He was Husky did very well, and then but he was very excited to build something himself. So he started Axia in the mid to late 90s, and the company was founded on the basis of getting into high performing internet at a time when internet was kind of a fad. It was kind of a brand new concept, and then from there in 2001 basically built the Alberta SuperNet, which is the first rural fiber network the biggest rural fiber network in the world at the time. 15,000 kilometers of fiber connecting all the communities throughout Alberta as a long-term economic development play. And then we took that model to France, which is more of a regional economy, and then to Singapore and connected 1.4 million premises directly with fiber. So it was kind of a cool thing because we had this very unique business model. This is where I started working at Axia about 10 years ago, 12 years ago now. But very cool how the same model worked in 3 very different applications in 3 very different countries. And the concept was, if you have a high-performing network, you should empower the user to use that network however they want. So open access infrastructure that can be shared amongst everybody means lower rates, means higher performance, means more choice, and ultimately, therefore, more competition. So as opposed to the typical telco bundle where they're trying to sell you on their whole vertical stack, we turned that on its side and said, start with the high-performing connectivity because that's the number one thing. And then at the time, this is all back in 2000s, early 2000s, turn loose what will become the cloud and digital economies so that you can do whatever you want and be totally empowered and unencumbered with that network. So I started that company 2007 and was on the global business development teams, was on the France and Singapore and some of our United States networks as well. So it was a lot of fun, great learning experience. And then we ultimately sold it last year and moved on to this.
It sold to Bell, right?
Correct. Yeah, Bell purchased it. And actually, we just sold the France business a couple of days ago as well. I shouldn't say I'm no longer involved. But Axia was sold for 1.2 billion in France 2 days ago.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a big number.
Yeah.
So was that a capital intensive business to get off the ground? It seems like it would be really capital intensive.
Yeah, at its early phases, they were government contracts, so government contract backed, but very capital intensive for sure in terms of building fiber infrastructure, literally plumbing it through the ditches and hanging it on poles, and it's a very physically intensive infrastructure, of course. So yeah, it very much started that way, and then the business that I was running at the end was the whole revenue business side, but focused on bringing gigabit services directly to consumers. So we had what we called fiber towns around Alberta, where we would build directly to your house with fiber and offer you gigabit, 1,000 megabits down, 1,000 megabits up for $99 a month, which was the best performance rate paradigm anywhere in the country, and the first of its kind. So we were very excited about bringing that value to the market. And but of course that came with a lot of investment. So it's not a business that can grow really fast, but it can be very, very attractive if you're totally focused on the customer and the customer's driving the experience.
So in the beginning, what did financing look like? Did the government help finance it, or?
Yeah, there was a couple $100 million. The initial grant was $193 million to help build out the network. Then Axia would have put in a bunch more on top of that. I won't get into too many of the specifics, but yeah, you could say the value of the network was $500 million in terms of the total investment to make it what it was.
Amazing. So what countries did you work in outside of Canada, and how much time did you spend abroad?
Yeah, France and Singapore and the US were three of them. Were the primary ones. We were kind of going around the world looking for the best, most progressive governments that really understood the value of this model that made the incumbent compete. And where they're challenged with getting the incumbent to upgrade their networks, because basically keeping the model the way it was the most profitable thing they could do, but that's the most disconnected from what the customer wants. Mm-hmm. So we came in with that business model that worked very well from a policy perspective of it's open, everybody can use it, including the telco. So it was a great learning experience in France and the way that they do business. In Singapore, it was just a totally different culture and governmental culture that I've ever experienced. Everybody like there, the highest status thing they do is go to, if they come out of university and they've got great grades and they're, the best and the brightest, they will go into the government right away. That's the mentality there. It pays higher. It has higher status in their culture. So you have these meetings where I was a young guy. I'm still reasonably young. But sitting around a table with 30 people that are 23, 24 years old, and the government people on this project of the network that we built, is very interesting, very different than the Alberta experience, for example. So very interesting on the government, how the government operates, and then the business culture. Of course, in the States, you're dog eat dog, cutthroat, litigious, you're facing lawsuits all the time. And that was quite a cool experience as well, to just see how they make decisions. That's the kind of the downside. The upside is they're so competitive that you bring anything that has a shred of differentiation to them and they're all over it, because they see they have to compete to survive. And that's even at the town level, at the small to medium-sized town level. So very interesting.
So I think if I remember correctly, you went to school in California. Mm-hmm. What made you decide to join your family at Axia? It sounded like growing up you had a really tight-knit family. You guys worked really well together. Yep. But what ultimately made you decide that was the right choice for you?
I was locked in a car with my dad driving home from California to Calgary, and he hard pitched me on it for 26 straight hours. No, he didn't. but we did have a conversation at that time. So my whole plan was, and I had the first business I had was a landscaping business in Springbank, filling a gap of people charging $150 an hour for doing some very basic landscaping work. So together with my friend Jarrett Good, Robert Price, the partners, we created Good Price landscaping business, which is, branding is not my specialty, clearly. But that helped get me through university and really whet my appetite in terms of, as basic as it all sounds, dealing with customers, dealing with pricing, how do you market yourself, how do you coordinate, how do you work together. We had a team working for us as well. So both a great way to pay the bills as a broke student, but at the same time get a taste for what it would be like to start a business. And then I took entrepreneurship in university. So I was coming out of university excited to build, what my plan was to build a wireless ISP business using the Alberta SuperNet, the Axia SuperNet. But Art was pitching me on, why don't you just take 6 months, work at Axia, see if you like it. We'll work on, at the time we were talking about using sensors in the oil field, which is quite a ways more commonplace today, but that was quite a ways ahead of its time. So I'd done that in university. I'd done a project on it, had a whole plan. So why don't we bring that to bring that to the company and see if we can make it into an offshoot business. Turned out my view of it was we were just too far ahead. The oil and gas industry needed to evolve and adopt more technology before they would go there. But got there for 6 months. That was my plan, to be there for 6 months, and then 10 years later, I was still there. But once I got into it, I really saw the opportunity to continue to learn more and more, and realized how much I still didn't know. I still know that today. Being a sponge is the most important lesson I've learned. So I had the opportunity to see a high-performing organization, great leadership, people that were really excited about and passionate about what we were doing, experience that culture. And I always had planned to start my own business. So I was either going to, whenever that learning curve flattened, I was going to shift gears. But it really didn't flat. I just continued to learn so much that by the time we were acquired, I was feeling pretty good about it.
That's awesome. So if you went back in time and you did one thing differently with the landscaping business to make it more successful, what would that one thing have been?
I'd probably come home earlier than I did, and spend more time in the summer, so I had more cash to work with during the year. Because I would also introduce, I was renting equipment, heavy equipment. So I started with, we were cutting grass and pulling weeds and like very hands-on stuff. By the third year, we were renting equipment and shaping land and creating berms and rototilling and doing all that stuff. Both, that was a better position in the market, and that was also higher revenue, higher earning potential business. So I would have done that at the start, but I'm not a guy that really looks back and regrets anything that way. You made those decisions with the information you had at the time, and hindsight is 2020. So it worked out.
That makes sense. So what advice do you have for entrepreneurs on scaling a business quickly? Because you've worked with different businesses, all of which you've scaled up. One of them to a massive level, and another one hopefully here soon.
Exactly.
What advice do you have to scaling quickly? Because I know a lot of entrepreneurs either stagnate and don't grow very quickly, whether it's for lack of marketing or lack of management or whatever. But I know also scaling can be capital intensive and expensive, right? Yep. Growth costs money. So what advice do you have around those things for effectively scaling a business?
Yeah, I think you want to have a concept that is, make sure that it's actually kind of inverted thinking. You don't want to turn into a schizophrenic in terms of making decisions. As you're going fast, it's easy to say, okay, well, let's do that, let's do this, let's do that, and just keep kind of, churning away and never really getting a baseline or making sure that you're still consistent with your fundamental value proposition. So I think people can get too lost in the details and feeling like they need to change their mind all the time and evolve every minute, every hour. I would say better to have, it always starts with, what is your fundamental value proposition? Do you have a differentiated business model? Starts there. And then you build ideas on top of it. And then you build, shareholders, you build the financial picture, you put it all together. But if you don't have that basic foundation, your business will be forever compromised. Doesn't mean it won't work, but it'll just always be difficult, because when you're in scale mode, you lose track of what your actual differentiation was from the start. So very good to focus on. I'm a big believer in planning as well. So always think ahead. Like the business case for Bode is 7 years. So looking out that far in advance, of course, as you go further out, your guesses become worse. Yeah. But it is good to say, here's the phasing I see in the business as fundamental positions in the market and organizational approach to these challenges. And then from there, don't deviate from what makes you different, what makes you special. Find the ways to continue to leverage what you have. Don't just change for the sake of changing, for the sake of, you're worried about sticking with your guns. So
how do you think you tell if you have that strong fundamental foundation?
Yeah, that that starts in the business case, the ideation period. So when Axia was acquired, I retired for 4 months and came up with, I had a list of 18 ideas that I really wanted to work on. But ideas are not businesses, of course. An idea can be a business, but that takes market research. That takes putting the what's the pricing paradigm, what's going on with the competition, where is the sector going, what are the tech trends, all those dimensions. You got to put those together into a comprehensive business case that creates a plan that people can buy into. Because that's the next thing you need is if you put a plan together, you don't have anybody that believes in it, that wants to work with you on it, then you kind of don't have anything, because you could be the smartest guy in the world, but it takes a team to be successful.
Growing up, what kind of influence did your dad have on you? What kind of things did he teach you that helped you to be successful?
I bought my first stock when I was 12, so apparently he had that tell me about making investments very early and the value of investing. It was a lot of just, he would tell stories. He's talking, and a lot of them are cool stories because he's got an interesting job. He's putting together government partnerships and he's dealing with prime ministers and traveling around the world, and so a lot of it was just listening and just taking it all in. Some of the best one of the best things I learned was the actual how to think of a value chain. So how do you, at every step, how do you look at a problem and solve it by creating a value chain and value that works and is valuable to the marketplace, as opposed to just freewheeling or taking shortcuts or getting disconnected from what the customer actually needs or what your success factors are. So the ability to see the value chain. The other part I think that he's instilled in me is look way ahead. How do you get, what does this look like 10 years from now? How do you get ahead and anticipate where the market is going? So by the time that the market gets there, you're in your sweet spot. And that would be true for Axia. Like, we were in the late 90s. I wasn't there yet. I was still in high school at that point. But from late 90s to 2010, you could say we were still too early. People didn't know what fiber was. People didn't know really how they could use connectivity in a comprehensive way. They were using it, of course, but the total, like the biggest picture of this will change the world forever. That level of transformation he saw in the mid 90s. He saw in the early 90s. So it's how do you get ahead, but don't get so far ahead that you can't create a business in the meantime. Was quite an interesting lesson, and I saw it and witnessed it and experienced it. I was part of it at Axia as well.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever butt heads with your dad when you guys were working together?
All the time. That's in a good way. Like, it's debates. It's not we disagree all the time, but I could always see where he was coming from, and that made I always respected, and he always respected my viewpoint. So it's never like a heated kind of personal thing. It's let's debate what makes the most sense here. We're having a logic debate. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, that makes him better and makes me better if you can have a good high integrity discussion like that. But they happen often, like daily.
Did you ever have doubts along your professional career and whatever you're doing that you're doing the right thing or you're in the right place in your life?
Yeah, good question. I think of two things when I think of my career. Am I learning, and do I have an opportunity to do more within that situation, within that organization? In Axia's case, I did. I was learning a crazy amount, and as long as you're learning and you're challenged and there's opportunity for you to do more in the organization, I need 2 out of 2 things for it to be exciting to me. And I always liked entrepreneurship. I always have been wired to say, why can't that be better? Look at everything and say, there's the opportunity to make that better. I do that with products. I do that with cars. I do that with experiences, with services. I've just always been wired that way. So it's a passionate thing for me, and I get to apply that passion in business. And Bode is doing that, which is exciting, which is saying why I see how it's being done today. I believe there's a whole segment of the market that would love to do it this other way. And I would also love to that way myself. So you're able to apply that whole mentality.
Did you have to sacrifice certain things or give up interests or stuff like that to be successful?
Yeah, I think I'm a big believer in a balanced lifestyle. In Axia's case, you're putting in pretty big hours, but they were very good to say people will just burn out if you're working 100-hour weeks and 7 days a week. So you want a culture that accepts flexible working. But in terms of compromises, I was a competitive tennis player as a junior and in university, played at school down in the States, and was a lot fitter than I've been since. So I'd like to be able to, you'd like that extra time, that extra ability to travel more and work out more and experience more things in your personal life. But you got to commit to the work and commit to getting it done to really be part of a transformational team.
Yeah, it's been a struggle for me. I competed in parkour for quite a few years, but since really focusing on the business, maintaining any competitive level of fitness has been almost impossible.
Yeah, and you have to remind yourself, because I get energized from working out. It's also great for your mind. It's great to clear your perspective. So even if you feel like you're taking time away from the business, you actually are freeing up your mind. You're liberating your mind to come back and do better things. So there's compromise in time there, but I think overall it's still the healthy thing to do and will make you more productive overall.
So what does your exercise routine look like? Like, what do you try to do in a week?
I'm right now in a competition with a good friend, most number of workouts in a month, and the loser has to buy the winner a dinner at Vintage Steakhouse just down the street here.
Nice.
So that does a good job of leveraging my competitive. He's very competitive. I'm very competitive. So we have to hit 30 minutes a day or more for it to count as a workout. So I do Nike Training as an app. I don't know if you've heard of it. They have all these predetermined workouts. You just click a button and the person yells at you and you just do what it tells you to do. So that's great. And then I still play tennis once or twice a week. I just really enjoy it, that amount, having done it 20 hours a week for most of my young life. So it's fun to still play 1 or 2 hours a week, but that would be it. And then I'm a big skier and every sport you can basically think of, I love. So
Riley, you want to compete for a steak dinner?
I recommend it. Our workouts, both of our workouts, like doubled from the start of that bet.
What other things other than exercise do you find help deal with stress? You don't come off as as a person that has a lot of issues dealing with stress.
No, I've always found the stress comes back to two things for me: is your attitude and your effort. What attitude are you taking to approach problems, and what level of effort are you giving? Those are actually only two things, if you boil it all the way down, you can control. So stress comes from trying to control something you can't control. Mm-hmm. And then now you're out of touch. You're trying to figure out how you're going to deal with that, and you can't impact in the way you want, and it feels out of touch. So, and that's true in many things, but you just need to acknowledge that it's the case and don't try to control those things. Control the things you can. And then at the end of the day, you see where the chips fall, because you can't control everything. But that very much starts with that mentality for me anyways. And then from there, sometimes it's just as simple as getting out, going for a drive or going for a walk, or getting out from in front of your computer and talking to people, talking to your team. I always get energized with people, with conversations. you can get locked in on reading emails and market research and diving into everything on your computer. But that too much of that for too long can get you wound up. It's better to take some time away, talk with people, change up your rhythm overall.
So we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but what advice do you have for new entrepreneurs starting a business, like say 6 months in?
I think the biggest thing to start with is, in addition to some of these other things, don't be greedy. If you're the founder, you're the CEO, don't be greedy. Make sure that you get as many people on your team involved that you want to be there for the long term, involved in your business from an ownership perspective right out of the gates. Be flexible, be thoughtful, and recognize everybody's individual situation is different and unique. But if you build a team that's also owns the business, there's another level of motivation, another level of pride and passion for really making that thing work. So I would go with that.
Cool. And what are your goals, both personally and for the business, in say the next 5 to 7 years?
Yeah, we'd love to take the company international and prove without a word of a doubt that this is the right model for a segment of the market. So we're excited about that. I'm not a guy that ever thinks of a flip business. There's a lot of people that or entrepreneurs can start that way, can think that way, and all the power to them. I just think it's all about long-term value creation, and it's really exciting to create a high impact business that can truly empower people with cost savings. And in this case, we're saving people an amount of money that is life-changing. Like, you could save $20,000 on a deal on the average transaction. That's your kid's college fund. That's less of an emotional thing, but making it a nicer kitchen. That's renovating your next house to make it more livable. That's real money. That's real impact, as well as instilling confidence in them that they can do this themselves, the empowerment that comes from it. So I'm most motivated by becoming the most customer-centric, highly rated business in real estate. That is the actual goal. And if we can get there, we believe we got a great start and we've got some great feedback already. But long term, we get there, then everything else works. It starts with that.
Awesome. It sounds like it could be a very powerful platform, and I'm excited to see what you guys do with it. We should definitely do another interview in a year and
love to
talk about all the struggles you've had over that time.
There will be many. There will be many.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, I love the conversation. Happy to do it again.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Our first sponsor is Syndication, which is a video production company that I started. We do video production and online marketing for businesses of all sizes, ranging from solopreneurs to Fortune 500 companies. Our next sponsor is Flagship Business Brokers. Flagship Business Brokers provides entrepreneurs with support through the purchase, sale, or financing of a business. They have a proven track record of delivering fast, cost-efficient, and client-focused transactions. Another sponsor of the Ambition Project is BusinessLink. BusinessLink is Alberta's entrepreneurial hub. They are a nonprofit organization that helps people navigate the steps towards starting their own businesses. Just because you're in business for yourself doesn't mean you're in business by yourself. BusinessLink's team of in-house startup experts are there to support you all along the way.